You're listening to Simply the Best Sports Take, the best podcast breaking down the best stuff in sports with host Sean Bingham. His takes are so good, he dropped the mic, but then you wouldn't be able to hear him, and that would suck.
Welcome into STB Sports Take, Simply the Best Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Bingham. Thank you for being here. Was not planning on doing this today. I said yesterday's podcast, that was probably it until Monday, but how could I resist? LeBron James and the Lakers knocked out in the first round. Had to get on here and talk about it. Was on Twitter, very active last night. You can follow me on Twitter at Sean Bingham. First off, though, again, thank you for being here. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor Podcasts. Everywhere you get your podcasts, we are there. Please hit that subscribe button. Today's will be quick. You can check the description for the timing at which we hit different segments. We're going to start, of course, with LeBron James and the Lakers, though. LeBron James, for the first time in his career, this is the big storyline, right? Oh, it's such a big story. LeBron, for the first time ever, loses in the first round. The dude missed the playoffs 2 years ago. The dude missed the playoffs his first two seasons. So, yeah, this is his first time losing in the first round, and that is, I guess, significant. But he missed the playoffs 2 years ago. So don't think, for those of you that have heard that stat, don't think that means he's made it to the second round or further every season of his career. He missed the playoffs just 2 years ago. So want to make sure that's clear. Okay, so a couple things. One, I've talked about how the championship last year clearly should have an asterisk next to it. I mean, it's the bubble. It was an AAU tournament. It reminds me of these high school tournaments that I would play in when I was a kid. We'd travel up to, for us, we'd go up to Utah State and Logan, or one time we went out to Purdue in Indiana, and you'd have these epic tournaments against really great competition. It was super fun, but there was very few people, if any, in the stands. It was just a completely different atmosphere than an actual high school game where you've got a few thousand people there watching. Same thing last year for the NBA, but on a much, much, much higher level. No travel, no fans, massive amounts of time off before they entered the bubble for people to get healthy. I mean, it was a longer off season than the actual off season. That's how much time they had off. So now, and I've said this repeatedly. I said it back then. I've said it throughout this season. And it's not just because I'm a LeBron hater, for those that think I am. I'm not. I'm on the record saying he's top 5 all time, probably top 2 or 3. Okay, so all-time great. So I'm far from a hater. A hater would be acting like he's no good. He's top 2 or 3, for sure top 5, okay? But that championship has an asterisk. It just does. The two teams that made the finals last year both just got blown out in the first round this year with the same teams, essentially. The Lakers claim they got better. They added Andre Drummond and, all these different things. Schroeder is supposed to be an upgrade from Rondo and stuff like that, right? Well, they got blown out. I mean, I know it went 6 games, but last night's game was a blowout. The series was not really that close. They were up 2-1. I know Anthony Davis got hurt, and you're going to just throw all these excuses at me. That's the thing. Results are excuses. Results are excuses. That seems to how it goes. Seems to be how it goes. But the Heat get swept. That series isn't even close other than the first game. It went to overtime, but then they're blown out 3 games in a row. The Lakers isn't really close. They get blown out. And so you look at that finals last year, and you're like, that was a meaningless finals. So LeBron's, got his 4th ring. And again, I'm active on Twitter. My good friend, Austin Story, he is a LeBronite if there ever was one. And I tweet that. I said, I said, still think the bubble finals shouldn't have a massive asterisk. Both teams blown out in first round this year. And he replies with, not at all. The lockout in 99 deserves to have one more than last year. I would agree that the 99 lockout deserves an asterisk. I don't know if this is an attempt at a dig towards MJ because he knows that I'm an MJ over LeBron guy, but that was not an MJ year. MJ's last championship was in 98. This was a Tim Duncan, David Robinson Spurs year. 99 was. It was a 50-game season, for those that don't know. So I would agree that deserves maybe a little bit of an asterisk. It was a 50-game season, but it was a normal season into normal playoffs. It was just a condensed season. This season was condensed. Guess what? LeBron's title with the Heat was a 62-game condensed season. So LeBron has not one title that has an asterisk because of the bubble, but he actually has 2, according to these standards, of a condensed season title. So 2 of LeBron's 4 championships, half of them have come on unique circumstance years. And then another one was against the Spurs. Again, Ray Allen hits that shot in Game 6 to tie it, the force of the Game 7. I mean, you look at what LeBron's done with his titles. It's like they could have gone either way, all of them. And two of them were asterisk ones, like the bubble and the condensed seasons. One other thing I tweeted last night was, this is officially, I think we can finally say that this is the end of the longest prime in NBA history for LeBron James. LeBron's prime has been longer than we've ever witnessed in professional basketball, maybe even in professional sports. And last night felt like that prime is over. He is clearly on the downslope. He's been on the downslope for several years, but he was still like prime LeBron. Because you've got I think we're going to see a pretty precipitous fall off at this point. I think we'll see him be, still average 20 plus next year, but he's not going to be the same as he's been. Year after that, I'm sure he'll play again. And I think that'll probably be his final year. We'll see. But it felt like we finally were witnessing, this is it. Like his prime is done. Like those years of dominating, those years of being able to, get to the hoop at will. He was getting blocked multiple times. He got rejected last night, multiple ugly turnovers. He's just not the same player he used to be. And it's because he's getting old and he's got a ton of mileage on those legs. And so I say this as a testament to LeBron. Like he has had the longest prime in the history of basketball and likely even in the history of professional sports. But last night, it felt like it finally was clear to all of us, like that prime has come to a close. So then the big question is, does this first round exit tarnish LeBron's legacy? And very, very clearly, you've got the Jordan lovers, saying, yes, it tarnishes his legacy. And the LeBron lovers saying, no, of course it doesn't. It's cemented. And guess what? As a Jordan, supporter, I do love Michael Jordan, but as someone who believes that Jordan is clearly the GOAT, I'm actually going to go on the side of the LeBronites and say this doesn't tarnish his legacy at all, but it cements what it already was. A guy that can't consistently rise to the occasion. Yes, he's won titles. Yes, he's all-time great. Yes, he's one of the most talented all-around basketball players in the history of mankind. Yes, he has had moments where he's been clutch and he's risen to the occasion, but he hasn't been able to do it consistently. And it cemented what his legacy already was, which is that he can't rise to the occasion consistently. Last night, he looked old, and he is old. He's 36. By professional basketball standards, that's old. And he looked it. So I think you'll see him come back next year with AD, and if they can stay healthy, I think they still have a chance to contend and compete. But they're not going to be the same. They need one more piece. They do, especially to compete with the likes of like a Brooklyn. But to me, like this cemented what we already knew about LeBron. We already knew this. We already knew that he was a great player. To me, this doesn't lower him in the rankings. Like to me, he's right around, second, third, fourth, fifth, somewhere in there. Second, third, fourth, all time. I'd say for me personally, I'm going to say at the worst, he's fourth. Okay, at the very worst, he's fourth all time. And I probably honestly would put him second. I just have a hard time when I think about, and here's what it comes down to for me, because I think everybody has different standards for this. If your standard is just who's the most talented, I did a whole podcast years ago, the MTO, like the most talent, or the Matote or something, the most talented of all time versus the greatest of all time. Most talented of all time, he's right there. He's right there, one or two with Jordan. Greatest of all time, you start to think, well, greatest, doesn't that mean winning? Like the intangibles of just getting it done, just finding a way to get it done and win, regardless of, circumstances. And because like Tom Brady is the GOAT, right, for quarterbacks. Well, he's not as talented as Aaron Rodgers. He's not as talented as Peyton Manning, but he's better. I'm taking him if I want to win a game. And that's kind of how I look at LeBron. I look at LeBron and Peyton Manning very similarly. They're right there, and they had those moments. They had those championships. They've had moments where they rose to the occasion. But the underlying theme of their careers is fantastic play muddled up with failure to rise to the occasion pretty frequently. Not always. Doesn't mean they never were clutch. Doesn't mean they never rose to the occasion or did anything good. It just means they frequently fell short when we kind of expected them to do something great. And I put LeBron and Peyton Manning both in that category. And so I think that LeBron, LeBron's, if I'm trying to win a championship, for my life depends on it, LeBron or Kobe. LeBron's more talented, but I'm taking Kobe. if I need to win a championship, I'm going to take Kobe. I'm certainly taking Jordan over anybody. So that's where I get a little bit confused on how I feel. I'm like, okay, you got to take all of these things into account. You've got to take statistics into account. You have to take efficiency into account. You have to take winning into account. You have to take accolades, MVPs, scoring titles, all NBA, nominations, all defense nominations, things like that. You have to take all that into account, and I think LeBron does deserve some extra credit for his longevity and durability. But winning, for me, is weighted heavier than all of those things. And in the end, yes, he's been to 10 finals. We can talk, if we want, briefly about how the East was just the weakest conference in the history of the NBA for many, many years, where he could just be the 4 seed and cakewalk his way to the conference championship, to the finals. And that's why he has a losing record in the finals, is because the best teams were waiting for him in the West. The top 2, 3, 4, 5 best teams in the league were all in the West. And then he gets to the West, misses the playoffs, wins the bubble title, which I'll give him credit. They won the title that existed that year. I will give him credit for that. I don't think it should be weighted even close to as heavily as a regular title. And now this year loses in the first round in blowout fashion. So I don't know. Anyway, so I'm kind of loving seeing this, though. I'm loving seeing the big markets out. Lakers out, Knicks out, Celtics out, Heat out, although I do like the Heat. But those are big markets. Boston, New York, LA, Miami. The Clippers are on the brink tonight. We'll see what happens there. So now it comes down to the Bucks, the Nuggets, the Jazz, teams like that. And I saw a tweet. It was Max Kellerman from ESPN's First Take talking about how the NBA must be so upset about this. And I'm like, it's a little disturbing. Like, the NBA should just want the best teams to win. They should want parity. That's, if their product isn't good enough on its own, like I said yesterday, I'm a fan of the sport first, teams and players second. So if these LA fans don't want to watch the finals because it's Utah versus Brooklyn or Utah versus Milwaukee, I guess they're not actually fans of the NBA. So the NBA needs to figure out how to improve their product. But I'm loving this playoff basketball. LeBron and the Lakers came out as if they didn't care at all last night. LeBron was pouty. There was just a lot of things that bothered me about him. And then for the second and third quarter, he was all out. I mean, he was trying very, very hard. He was hustling. He was having to wave for a sub. He'd go out for like 30 seconds of game time, sit down for a minute, catch his breath, drink a bunch of water, and come back in and try hard. I was loving those 2 quarters. The first quarter is like he didn't even care, didn't want to shoot, wanted to pout, wanted to make sure the blame was on all of his teammates. And then towards the end of the game, I'd say through about halfway through the fourth quarter, he started going back to that because they were just chipping away at that massive lead. It was as high as 29 points at one point. They get it all the way down to 10. They could never crack into single digits. And I was wanting them to. I wanted to be entertained. I wanted to see a Game 7. To me, that, like I say, I'm a fan of the sport first. I wanted to see all of that. Didn't happen. And LeBron goes back to pouting, complaining to the refs. There were times where I remember on one occasion, he's down there pouting about a foul to the ref, actually goes out of his way so as the whole team's running back on defense, he's walking forward to an official to complain. Meanwhile, his guy gets the ball, Jay Crowder, down on the other end and hits a 3. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And it just reminds me of that play in the playoffs against the Knicks, Michael Jordan versus the Knicks, where Jordan he goes behind the back, hits this cool little jumper kind of, in the lane, and steals and then runs back, steals the inbounds pass, kind of like he's picking it off like he's a DB in football, comes driving back down, gets the ball poked away from him by Xavier McDaniel. They go on a fast break. Jordan, sprints down, chases him down, swats the ball out of his hands right before Xavier McDaniel is able to lay it in. And that's the whole, Magic Johnson. Whose game is it? It's Michael Jordan's game. Like one of the best sequences in basketball I've ever seen. And you just don't see that kind of hustle and that kind of heart out of LeBron. He cares too much about his image to do that. He needs to make sure that we see him complaining to the ref so that we think, oh, he probably did get fouled. Yeah, I bet he got hit. That's why he missed that shot. So to me, there was a lot of things he did like that. And then to start the game, he's taking no shots. And then at the end of the game, he's just jacking up threes at the end. And I'm like, why was he not more aggressive early? Why was he not shooting early? Drive it to the hoop, take some threes, like be the man. Anthony Davis goes out early. He's played 5 minutes, goes out with the groin injury, which we knew was going to happen if he played. And LeBron needs to step up and just be the man and score some points. And the whole team scored, I think, 14 points in the first quarter. Devin Booker had 22. This was a coming out party for Devin Booker, by the way. This guy, I'm still taking Donovan Mitchell over him, but man, this kid can play. And I'm going to get into the Jazz momentarily, but Devin Booker, to me, is right there with Donovan Mitchell, but I think he's starting to get more credit than him just because they beat the Lakers. So Donovan Mitchell needs to have a big series again next round, get to a conference finals, and be so good they can no longer ignore you. Just like I said in yesterday's podcast, be so good they can't ignore you. That's the thing that Donovan Mitchell and the Jazz need to do because they're not getting any respect. They're not getting any publicity. They're not getting any love. And they've been the best team in the league all year long, and it's time for them to go and prove it. The Lakers, LeBron and the Lakers are human. They're gone now. They're out. The Clippers are clearly overrated. We're better than the Mavericks. And the Suns, while they've beaten us 3-0 this year against the Jazz, I think the Jazz have a real shot at beating them. I think I would give I would favor the Jazz in that series. I think we match up really well. We'll have home court advantage. And Chris Paul is clearly dinged up a little bit. You saw him in and out of the lineup quite a bit last night. They were only playing him when they absolutely needed to. He's not the same. His shoulder's clearly hurt. And now he's got to go through the Nuggets before he can even get to the Jazz. So the Jazz have a real shot at going to an NBA Finals this year. They really, truly do. Just got to stay healthy and stay humble and do our game, hit open shots, move the ball. And I'm hoping that D. Wade's presence on the team, that championship presence, even though he's not on the team or on the coaching staff, he's only 39. He's still kind of a peer to a lot of these players that we have. And he's right there courtside. He's an owner. He's got full access to the team. He's wearing Jazz gear. He's on the Jazz. And so I'm hoping that championship mentality can spill over onto the players and the coaches, and we can see the Jazz make a run. This is the year. This is the year the Jazz could get something really special done. Brooklyn's going to be almost impossible to beat if they're healthy, but they've struggled to stay healthy. So we'll see what happens there. They've got a lot of games to go through before they would get to us. So it's definitely a chance for the Jazz, and I really want to see Donovan Mitchell and the Jazz get their due, like we're seeing now Devin Booker get his, because to me, they're better. The Jazz are just better. So, okay, a couple other things. Damian Lillard last night, they lose. They were up. I was watching it at the gym. They were up by 9. They ended up losing by 15, I think it was. I'm trying to find it here. Yeah, 11. They lost by 11. So 126-115. And they were up, going into the fourth, they were up a decent amount, but they get outscored by 14 points in the fourth quarter. Rough fourth quarter. But the big thing afterwards is Damian Lillard he Instagrammed, and I actually did have it pulled up, but I forgot to, so let me just look it up here while I'm chatting it up. But he's basically hinting that he might be out of Portland. So his caption here is just him kind of strolling, and it's a quote. It's a Nipsey Hussle quote, R.I.P. He put, "How long should I stay dedicated? How long till opportunity meet preparation?" It's a quote, and then he quotes Nipsey Hussle. "How long should I stay dedicated? How long till opportunity meet preparation?" I mean, seems kind of cryptic. Is he leaving Portland? I mean, he's under contract for 3 more years, but this is him saying, how long should I stay dedicated to this team? How long until it actually, works out? Or maybe he's saying basketball. I don't know, but it definitely has that feel of I can't get it done in Portland with these guys. I can't get it done. How long do I stay dedicated here before I need to win a championship? And if I can't win a championship here, how long do I stay here? Because Damian Lillard's turning 31 here in a month. So, and he's short. Short guys that rely on athleticism. Now, he is a lights-out shooter, but he's able to create his own shot because of his quickness, his ball handling skills, and his explosiveness, and his elevation, his lift on his jump shot. That stuff is the stuff that fades. Your agility, your quickness, your explosiveness, that's the stuff that fades very quickly, actually, in your 30s, and to where the rest of the pack can catch up to you. And when you're short, then all of a sudden you can't get your shot off. That's why you see guys like Dwayne Wade, their careers ended a little bit earlier than a LeBron James, even though they came into the league the same season, because he relied so much on explosiveness. That's been my one thing with Donovan Mitchell is I'm we got to his prime is going to be shorter than like a 6'8" guy, you know? He's only 6'1". Like he relies heavily on being able to jump very high and being very, very athletic. And those are the things that fade the quickest, the earliest. So Damian Lillard, he's got 3 years left on his contract, and this could be the year that he either forces Portland to go and get somebody to help him out more, because they're one star away from being a true contender, because they have a really solid team. They've got Lillard, McCollum, Nurkic, Melo, Norman Powell, Robert Covington. Like, they've got a solid team. That's a solid 6 guys. But in today's league, like, they need another star. It doesn't have to be a superstar, but another legitimate all-star, like somebody that is a slightly better than CJ McCollum, but you also get to keep McCollum. You know, if they could do that, somehow pull that off. I don't know how you do it. Maybe you leverage draft picks and do it that way. But they'd have to get one more star in order to truly compete. Like, they're just not. I mean, they can't even beat the Nuggets without Jamal Murray. You know, and which, by the way, I want to talk about that too. Jamal Murray is a great player, but I've said several times throughout the last year or so on this podcast that, to me, Michael Porter Jr. is a star waiting to just erupt. And we're seeing that. Like, it's kind of like when the Jazz lost Gordon Hayward and all of a sudden Donovan Mitchell comes onto the scene and we're like, oh, wow, like, he's way better than Gordon Hayward. And he is. And we're better off without Gordon Hayward. Because if Gordon Hayward were here, Donovan Mitchell's star wouldn't be shining near as bright as it is. And I'm not saying the Nuggets are better without Jamal Murray, but I don't think they're as bad off, as worse off as we think, because I think it's giving Michael Porter Jr. a chance to really emerge as probably a better scorer than Jamal Murray, to be quite frank, even though I know Jamal Murray was dropping 50 and stuff against the Jazz last year in the playoffs. I think Michael Porter Jr. will prove to be the better NBA basketball player, just to be quite honest. And I think that he would still be relegated to a third, fourth option offensively if Jamal Murray were there. So this could be a blessing in disguise for the Nuggets, if we're being totally honest. We'll see what happens in this next series. I think you'll see the Suns win. I'll get into my predictions and stuff probably on Monday. But anyway, interesting to see what happens with Damian Lillard. I would love to see him come to the Jazz. Again, he's under contract for 3 more years, and those are his 3 best years. He'll be 34 by the time he's an unrestricted free agent. And at 34 years old in the NBA as a short guy, you're starting to really – it's a total crapshoot if you're going to have the ability to do what you can currently do. In fact, it's very likely that these are the last remaining 3 great years for Damian Lillard, and he's under contract in Portland. So this could be the year where he says, look, enough is enough. I'm not coming back here. Trade me. Or get somebody in here that can really help us win a title, like somebody legitimate, you know, somebody, even if it's like I'm trying to think of like I don't know who would be a good fit, you know, but I'm not saying this would be a good fit, but the level at which I'm thinking that's realistic would be like a Domantas Sabonis, like an all-star, but he's not like some superstar that the whole league's just like salivating over, right? Like, but an all-star caliber player, like a true all-star, like a Chris Middleton, you know, somebody who's a slight upgrade from McCollum, but you also get to keep McCollum. And they should give up draft picks. They should give up, you know, anyone on their bench, you know, to get a guy like that. Yeah, Chris Middleton would be a good one. Domantas Sabonis. So that's the level of player that I'm talking about as far as talent goes. But anyway, we'll see. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I had here. This was a podcast I was not planning on doing, so thank you for listening. But the game tonight, of course, the Clippers and the Mavs. I got to make a prediction there. I think the Mavs close it out. I'm going to have to say it. I've been flip-flopping back and forth. I'm telling you right now, if the Mavs lose this game, I'm going to pick the Clippers for the next game, so just prepare for that. But to me, the Clippers are big on name only. I think we fall, this is the other thing I did want to touch on. I knew there was one more thing in my head. I think we fall victim to like reputation and name. And the media does this to us. And they cover, that's why Donovan Mitchell, even in my mind sometimes, I'm like, is he as good as, you know, like almost like doubt myself, you know, like my own eyeballs when I watch him and like the statistics that I see, because nobody else talks about him. They talk about Devin Booker. They talk about LeBron James. They talk about Kevin Durant. They talk about Kawhi Leonard. Donovan Mitchell's right there. Like, he's not at the Kevin Durant level. But like, if I look at the series just now with LeBron, is LeBron better? Yeah, of course he is, but not by much. And I'd take Donovan Mitchell over Devin Booker. I think we fall victim to reputation. Are Kawhi, like Donovan Mitchell or Paul George? I'm taking Donovan Mitchell 10 times out of 10. Paul George is a good player, but I think his reputation is greater than his actual play. I think the same of Kawhi Leonard. I think the same of LeBron James. I mean, and then it's like, oh, well, these guys, Anthony Davis and LeBron James. And again, another thing from yesterday, if you're not available to play, how good are you? How valuable are you to your team? No matter how talented you are, if you can't be on the court, Anthony Davis. And so to me, like reputation, that's what the Clippers are going off of. Their reputation is that they're a phenomenal defensive team. They've got superstars in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. And then you look at their actual results and it's like, I think we were wrong. I think that's just what we thought, but it's not actually true. So I think that the Mavericks will win tonight. But if they lose, I'm going to flip-flop again and say the Clippers. Okay, that's all the time I have for today. I will see you guys on Monday. Please subscribe. Please share the podcast. You guys are awesome. I will see you next time. I am out. Peace.
Thanks for hanging with Simply the Best Sports Take. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and check out STBSportsTake.com. Simply the best in sports.
'Cause we are warriors.